All right, welcome back. This video is going to be about how I make my insulated feeder and observation boxes that go on top of the hives, and also my insulated covers that go on top of the hives for winter. Let's get started. All right, so this is the evolution of my winter, summer feeder insulation box that I have on top of all my hives. And right now those boxes are made of wood, but I wanted to make something more compact and less complicated. So I went with another Lyson box. This is a medium super from Lyson. I chose these because they have the nesting feature. So this fits directly on top of the existing hive that I just built. I also didn't like the handholds in the handles here, the cutouts, because again, this is area that isn't insulated because this is all negative space. So I tried using spray foam, just a can of spray foam on the first round, but this is actually very soft foam. It's kind of squishy and it's just kind of messy, and I didn't like the result with the spray foam can. So I found this pourable foam. It's a 2-part pouring foam. This is a 4-pound foam, and you mix part A and part B together, and you got to pour it really fast. But it pours right into the handholds, and you kind of move it around so that it coats the whole surface. And within a couple of minutes, this stuff is rock hard. And this is the same like hardness as the hive. So I like this stuff. Poured it in here in like 2-3 minutes. It was like rock hard. Cut it off with a blade, and I sanded it with a hand sander, and it came out nice and flat. So that's a really nice solution. Before I did that, I ran this through the table saw to cut a groove down in the bottom. Of where the box is going to be. The box sits like this. This is the lower part of the box. That's a 3/8 thick dado cut on the table saw. I tried doing the first one with a router, and it was a horrible mess. It melted the foam and I just made a lot of mistakes with it. So the router was not a good idea. Table saw with the dado blade was perfect. I ran all 8 of these supers through in, like 10 minutes. They just zipped right through nice and easy. So I got a groove down there, which will hold the plexiglass. And I went with plexiglass because I want to be able to see into the boxes and see the bees. So this is the bottom of the box. This is taking the place of an inner cover. The inner cover is now part of this, and it's kind of like a Vivaldi board, but it's not a Vivaldi board in the sense that anything will vent from the hive. I want everything sealed tight, so this is going to be sealed tight. This hole is my feeder hole, and this is going to go on here. So this will be closed most of the time. And when I want to feed in the fall, I can just turn this dial and open the hole. And that will be where I put my bucket for feeding. So that is the goal of these boxes. It is meant to be a winter box that sits on top of the hive that never gets open, and you don't have to disturb the bees to look down and see where the cluster is, and you can actually see in there and see whether there's honey on the frames right through the plexiglass. This is super easy assembly, and let's get started. All right, this is the fun part. This just goes in like a drawer bottom. Here it is. And that's what you're going to see over the winter, looking right in the hive. The bees will propolize the bottom. They're going to propolize that gap nice and tight right there. And this is going to be the inner cover for the winter. I know I didn't show this on the video. I don't think I recorded it, but to make this hole in plexiglass, I used a 1.5 inch paddle bit, spade bit. You need to put the plexiglass flat on a piece of wood so it's supported, and then just go through, you know, sort of like half speed on a hand drill, and I just went right through the hole. It does make kind of a smelly, burn plastic smell when you go through this, so I did this outside. I recommend outdoors drilling through this, but it went through pretty easily, and you know, after a couple of tries, you get the hang of it. Next step is to affix the dials inside here. So to do that, I'm going to just drill a hole through the plastic. I have an Amazon shop, and these are linked in my Amazon shop. I found these. They have a really nice big hole for feeding. This is one of the bigger holes I found. It's an 1.5 inch size hole. And they're pretty cheap to get these. They do have some burrs on here, and I do sand this off so that when this rubs on the plastic, it doesn't scratch everything up. So just do a quick go over with sandpaper, and that just makes this a little nicer for spinning this around when you're using it. So just put this where you want it in the open position. Sometimes, I don't know, you might want it that way. Do whatever you want, but when you put it on there, just put it on where you want it to be in the open position and mark where your center hole is going to be. So this little hardware here is also linked on my Amazon shop. It's a thumb nut and a machine screw. Put that in from the bottom. And this little thumb screw just goes right on. So this is just a thumb screw so I can open and close it out in the bee yard without any worries about needing tools up there. So this is the observation and feeder box that will go right on top of the hive. I'm going to fill this up with insulation or burlap. I'm not sure how I'm going to do it yet, but this will be filled with material to keep heat inside the hive. And 1 month a year or so, usually in October when I am feeding the bees, I just open this up, put food on the hive, they come right up and they can take syrup from a bucket up here in this box. But most of the time, like 11 months of the year, this is shut and closed tight to keep heat down, to keep the bees down there. And then this thing is just filled with insulation. Now, to keep this thing warm, to keep this hive temperature so that there's no condensation on the plexiglass, I'm making a foam shell that goes around this whole thing, and that is coming up now. Now, on version 1.0 of the bee barn, I had a highly insulated hive body and a highly insulated upper box here. And in between the box and the hive, I had a wooden inner cover right on top of the hive. I thought that the upper insulation box was going to be enough to keep everything warm, keep the heat down in the hive so the bees would be warm and I wouldn't have moisture problems. But I was wrong, and I forgot about the thermal bridge of the inner cover, which was not insulated at all. So the cold air made the inner cover cold, and that cold crept into the hive, and then it made condensation form inside on the inner cover. And that condensation just went all over the inside of the hive. So that was a design mistake, and I wanted to fix it on this version. So in this version, I got rid of the inner cover completely, and I made this box out of insulated material, out of styrofoam. So this is the plexiglass piece here. This is an insulated box. However, I know that because this is going to be sitting out in the cold for the entire winter, eventually this will get cold and draw cold air in to the inside of this, and eventually that plexiglass is going to get cold. So I want to create a thermal break between this and the outside air, and I'm going to do that with styrofoam. I'm going to make a whole cover that goes over the whole deal here with an air gap so that that outside foam cover is not touching this. So we're going to have outside air, then polystyrene, then an air gap here against this, then this is insulated, and then the plexiglass inside. So I shouldn't have any more problems with the cold air touching that glass on the inside and making condensation. All right, I'm not going to be sharing exact measurements for what I'm doing here because this is meant to be sort of an inspiration for you to do your own box. I don't know what kind of box you have, what kind of foam you have, and stuff like that. So I'm just going to show you how I do this, and you can make your own measurements. But basically what I do is I take a piece of foam. I'm using 2-inch polyiso foam. This is not the ideal foam to be using for outdoor insulating. I know this loses some R value when it gets cold, but I do like that this is fiberglass coated, which makes a nice lid for the whole hive. So I also had this laying around. So I have 2 inches of polyiso, and I know my box is going to go, I'm doing this upside down, so imagine this is the other way, but I want the box to be surrounded by foam, and I have 2-inch foam for the sides. So what I do is measure the length and width of the box, add 2 inches on each side, but then I added another inch to that measurement on each dimension. Because when I have the foam on here, I want there to be a gap in between. I don't want the foam tight up against the box, and I've made these before, and I know that it's actually very hard to build tight to the box. So give yourself an inch total length and width. So there'll be a 1/2 inch air gap roughly around the entire box on all 4 sides. So just measure how big this should be, cut out that foam, and then I'm going to measure this. This is the height of the box, but I have mine mitered out a little bit so that I can catch the hive edge when it goes on the box. So I measured and cut these all on the table saw, and now I'm going to cut the miters to fit around the box on the miter saw. All right, so all these pieces are cut to the same height, and they all have a miter on one side, and that is so that when they sit on the hive body, that miter meets up with the miter at the top of the hive. You'll see when all this gets put together. But these are all a consistent height now from the table saw, but now I got to miter them so they fit on this board here. So these are going to go here, and then these are going to be the outsides. So I need to miter these on the miter saw, and I'm going to show you that now. All right, now it is time for assembly. And this is 2 parts. Got our side pieces and our top. First, we're going to assemble the side pieces. So what I'm going to do here is stagger a short, then a long, short, long. Make sure they're all facing the right way so the mitered side is at the top. And then we're going to tape these together with zip tape. The magical tape. Got my knife affixed to the bench here for easy cuts. Zip tape takes a lot of practice, but I've been doing zip tape for quite a few years, so I know kind of how to use it. But once you stick the stuff to foam, it does not come unstuck, so be careful. Now we flip it, and I'm using some elastomeric sealant. This is not just painter's caulk. This is actually more like almost like a glue, but it remains flexible, but it sticks really well to the foam. So I'm just putting a little bit in each joint here. and then we fold them up. And then one more piece of tape here. Only put it on one side first. Make sure you're lined up. Squeeze, and then stick. That's our sides of our box. And now more sealant, just a bead around the whole thing. Lid, and then zip it. I like to stick the tape on so that it overlaps the top just a little bit, maybe like ½ inch. Push down and make the connection. That brings the zip tape from the top all the way over, and it bridges all the foam. There's the box. We got mitered corners to match up with the miter on the hive. And now I'm going to put a bead of caulk on the inside here as well to seal up these corners on the inside. And then coat of paint, and this will be ready to slide onto the outside of all of these. Again, the great thing about these particular boxes is they do match up with an overlapping joint here. So once this is on here, it's actually kind of hooked on there, and any water, rain, whatever, could not get in here. But because, like I said, I was worried about the cold touching this, is this shell that we just made and painted goes over the whole deal like this. And it's not tight, there's a gap in here, and that sets down on there. And those mitered edges that we did earlier, the miters match up with these miters so that it sits and it sort of falls, the weight of it just sort of falls down on those miters and gives it some good connection in there. So there's no gap at all here for wind to get up in there. And I'm going to strap this down on top of the hive, and this is how the bees are going to go through winter. So that's my plan. We'll see how it goes. So if you plan on building something like this, you can copy what I did exactly. You can modify this for a wooden hive. You can use different thicknesses of foam depending on what you want to do. It's really up to you. The whole point of this video series is to give you an inspiration to think this way and to build something your way, but with this sort of inspiration. So that's my goal. So thanks for watching, and please comment below if you have questions, and I will see you guys on the next video. I have eggs on my frames in my hives from the top all the way to the bottom cell. I never saw eggs down here on these kind of frames. So the queens are more efficient. They don't have to jump gaps. They don't have to move frames. They can spend a whole day just filling up a frame with brood.